everyone, and welcome. I would now like to open our Board of Trustees meeting for this evening. I now call the meeting to order. Let us all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence to honor our fallen armed services and those fallen by the COVID pandemic. I would now like to call upon the village treasurer, Irene Wu, to present the budget that were made to the proposed budget to the board and to the public.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the mayor and all the trustees for the thoroughness in reviewing this budget. From all the budget work sessions, the public work sessions, to all the hours spent answering questions over the last few weeks with every single one of you. You know, it's a large time commitment on your end in gaining an understanding of the budget and the process. So I appreciate that. And then a special thanks to Trustee Deegan, who helped coordinate a lot of those questions as well. So tonight is the culmination of this process, and tonight I will briefly review with you all the budget that is scheduled to be adopted tonight. So I'll start by reviewing the general fund budget, the operating budget. There are no substantive changes to the operating budget. There was one change that was requested by the Recreation Department. Mr. Paul Blake had some transfer of employees from the Recreation Department to the Parks Department to realign those employees with the functions with the department. So, but there are no dollar impact to those changes. Beyond that, this is the same budget that was presented, the tentative budget. So just to review again, the expense appropriations total $65,056,000, and those expense appropriations are will be funded through three sources: the current year surplus of $2,067,000, estimated revenues of $9,715,000. And a tax levy of $53,273,000. This tax levy,
$53 million.
I'm sorry, $53 million. Thank you, Mr. B. So this tax levy represents a 1.95% increase over the prior year. And as I presented at the first budget work session, this is below the level that's allowed per the tax levy limit law. That's approximately 2.4%. Over the last 6 years, the village has made a concerted effort to raise taxes way below that allowed by the law, and so this year continues that trend. Okay. The next slide is the summary of capital projects. Okay. So at last week's public hearing and work session, the board had discussions over a couple of projects and voted on and agreed to make a couple of changes. So we start off by looking at the tentative budget that was presented, and for all intents and purposes, we're showing a 5-year plan for informational purposes, but the board tonight will be voting on the capital plan for the 21-22 fiscal year. So the original tentative budget that was presented had a total of capital projects in the amount of $12,551,000. Last week, the board agreed and voted on a change to reduce the fire station renovations project from $7.5 million to $3.5 million. So that's a $4 million reduction. The second project that was amended was the road paving and repairs project. that had a $868,000 proposed budget, and that was raised to $1.7 million. So that's an $831,000 increase. The third project listed here is a project that is not included in the tentative budget when it was printed. However, subsequent to the printing of the tentative budget, the police department added this project, and it was presented when they presented their budget to the board on March 24th. And this project, the police body cameras project, is in the amount of $200,000, but it impacts the 22-23 fiscal year, so that technically this project is not being adopted tonight, but is being added to the 5-year capital plan for informational purposes at this point. So the total adopted budget for 21-22 fiscal year is $9.3 million. Of that total, the funding from taxes remains the same at $4,483,000. And the amount suggested to be bonded is reduced from $8,068,000 down to $4,825,000. Regarding the bonding, so the $4.8 million, if these projects continue next year, will be bonded when we do our annual bonding of projects. And we currently have 2 authorized but unissued projects. So the bond resolutions were done, but the board deferred these projects into the 21-22 fiscal year. Those 2 projects total $2.4 million. They are the Village Hall repointing project and the Village Hall HVAC project. So those 2 projects are expected to begin next fiscal year. And there's also another project that was approved in this year's capital plan, and the bond resolution has not yet been authorized. That project is the abatement of the St. Paul's. That project was anticipated to begin once the stabilization project ended, and that project is still ongoing. So that's potentially another project that will commence in the next fiscal year, and that was approved for $2 million. So in total, the estimated bonding as of now projects is expected to be about $9.2 million. Generally, we try to keep the bonding amount, $7 to $8 million a year to keep the debt service level over the next few years. But the bonding, again, once we go out to bond, we look at the projects, where are they are they going to start soon, or have they started? So we typically don't bond projects that are not expected to start within the next fiscal year. And so that is the summary of the adopted budget. Are there any questions?
No questions? Thank you very much, Treasurer Wu. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any citizen comments regarding the agenda items? Please state your name and address, please. No one? Okay, and I would like to move to the consent calendar and the adoption of the village budget. At this time, I have a motion that pursuant to section 5-508 of the New York State Village Law, the following budget of estimated revenues and expenditures of the Village of Garden City for the fiscal year June 1, 2021 to May 31st, 2022, and the same be approved and adopted as filed.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The budget is adopted as filed. The next order of business is another budget resolution regarding the collection of taxes under this budget. Specifically, do I have a motion as follows?
Mayor, I would anticipate a motion along the following lines. Whereas, the budget of estimated revenues and expenditures of the Village of Garden City for the fiscal year June 1, 21 to May 31, 22 was adopted by the Board of Trustees at this meeting following a public hearing thereon pursuant to section 5-508 of the Village Law. And whereas taxes in the amount of $53,273,484 are required for the purpose of meeting the proposed expenditures provided for in such budget, and whereas it has been further determined that such taxes be apportioned against all of the taxable property in the Village of Garden City as set forth on the 2021 assessment roll at the rate of $50.3262 on each $100 of assessed valuation thereon, except properties of the Long Island Railroad Company, which shall be taxed in accordance with the provisions of the real property tax law. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to the provisions of section 1420 of the real property tax law, the village clerk be and hereby is authorized and directed to extend and carry out on such roll the amount to be collected from the owners of properties listed therein as here and above specified. Is there a trustee who wishes to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by trustee Delaney, seconded, and is there any discussion on that motion? Seconded by trustee Foley, I'm sorry. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. Mayor, I would anticipate that there's another resolution in connection with this budget that would be as follows. Resolved that pursuant to section 1420 of the real property tax law, the following funds necessary to meet the obligations of the Village of Garden City for the fiscal year June 1, 21 to May 31st, 22, the raised by levy of tax on all taxable property in the Village of Garden City is set forth on the 2021 assessment roll of the village, being the assessment roll completed on April 1, 2021. First, the total amount of budget for the fiscal year June 1, 21 to and including May 31st, 22, as adopted by the Board of Trustees following the public hearing held on April 29, 2021, in the amount of $65,055,783. Next, an appropriated surplus of $2,066,803, less estimated revenues for 21-22 in the amount of $9,715,496, leaving a balance to be raised by a tax levy of $53,273,484. Next, that the tax rate for the collection of said village tax levy be fixed at 50.3262 per $100 of assessed valuation on such taxable property. Next, that said taxes shall be collected in 2 equal installments pursuant to the provisions of section 1434 of the real property tax law, the first installment to become due and payable June 1, 2021, and the second installment to become due and payable December 1, 2021. And next, that pursuant to subdivision 2 of section 1434 of the real property tax law, a discount of 1% being at the rate of 2% per annum be allowed on the payment of the second half of the 2021 village tax due December 1, 21, provided the same is paid prior to June 30, simultaneously with the first half of such tax that is due and payable on June 1, 2021. And lastly, that the mayor be, and he hereby is, authorized to execute and deliver to the village clerk a warrant directing them to proceed with the collection of such taxes, as provided in Article 14 of the real property tax law. Is there a trustee making that motion?
I'll make it.
Made by trustee Delaney,
Second. I'll second.
seconded, and is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously, and the motion carries. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are finished with the adoption of the village budget. I'm opening up the floor to any citizen comments on non-agenda items. Seeing there are no further citizen comments, may I ask for a motion to close the meeting?
Oh, I'm going to make a motion,
Excuse me.
would I do that, to go into an executive session? All right,
Yes, trustee, if you are moving to move into an executive session to discuss the matter of personnel, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the board is now moving into executive session. Mayor, will the board be returning into open session in order to close the meeting? And I understand that no vote is anticipated during the executive session, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, therefore, the board will return at what time?
15 minutes?
In 15 minutes from this time point. And it is anticipated that the sole reason for the return to public session will be to close the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, the open meeting is adjourned to go into executive session.
The microphones are muted, the video is stopped.